What up? Looks like I'm now live. Hey. Should I wait for... I see other people wait for people to trickle in. I don't know. This is the day after Christmas. I think people are sleeping. I don't know what time it is either. Yo, happy holidays, Merry Christmas to everybody. It's the 26th of December. What's going on, Brian? And I just wanted to get on and just talk, man. I had an amazing Christmas with my family, particularly Sheba's family out here in Maryland, and we chilled and had a great time, and I got a chance to spend time with awesome people and to just reflect on a great year. I hope y'all had a good year. It's been tough for everyone, I'm sure, but I hope and I know it was also positive. There were things we all learned from and connections we made, and you know, we about to start another year, man. It's about to be 2022, and I hope everybody's new year is just an extension of some of the better parts of the 2021. You know, I hope we get the strength to show love to each other and to support each other and to like step into our best selves, man. It's been a pretty crazy year for me. Lots of change. I got married this year. I moved out to Baltimore this year. I quit my job this year. I started to really challenge myself back again as like an independent artist working for clients, but also as an independent artist working for myself, like coming up with content, figuring out where and how I wanted to press with my voice. And it's been interesting. It didn't, you know what I'm saying? It's still ongoing, and I'm working on something right now that I can't wait to show you guys, and it'll probably be early 2022. But the whole process has been nuts. So, you know, figured out, just wanted to talk about the last year and the future year. But Sheba, man, I hope people got to see my wife Sheba recently, man. Like I haven't done one of these lives alone in a while, in part because, you know, I'm using Sheba as a crutch almost. She's so funny and interesting, and she takes combos in directions that I wouldn't expect and didn't know. You know, we had this whole, Sheba and I over the last several combos have been talking about just marriage and challenges and violence and within couples and such. And you know, I could have gone there, but I think the way the combo developed really was just Sheba's uniqueness, man, and her talent, you know, and her uniqueness and her passion and her biases and her everything, you know, the good and the bad. That's the whole thing about it, you know. As I think about some of the like I said, it takes some of the pressure off me because she's so energetic and like really talented. So, but I need to do some of these myself. But I would think even in the times I do with Sheba, like thinking about how my energy is, like how I felt during these conversations. My therapist, I've learned through the therapy that like control is a thing for me. So yeah, there are moments when I feel like, in terms of my control of the conversation, I don't have it all the time. That's what it means to be, you know, in partnership. I think it's to sometimes not have the full control, or maybe not all the time. It's constantly a dance and constantly an exchange, you know. But it's been cool to notice that about myself and try to see where it comes from and to think about like the underlying ideas and what am I attached to, right? So, you know, in the middle of a convo, I find myself trying to this idea of what as a dude, this is my channel, this is Instagram live, and you know, how should I be posturing here, how should I be speaking more, and be like, nah, yo, she got this. You know what I'm saying? And to add my input, but to also make sure that, you know, we talk about things in their fullness with the benefit of her. That's been an interesting thing for me. She's a powerful lady. I tried to say that in an early one of these, like I think when we first moved out here in March. Yo, she's powerful. She's dope. I'm excited for her. On the 30th, she's in the finals for Baltimore New Comedian of the Year. That's gonna be dope. I'm so excited. We're gonna be rooting for her. And anybody out in Baltimore, come through to Magoobies and check it out. So there's that. What else? I wanted to talk about, you know, at the chilling with my nieces over Christmas, man, I was observing something about sort of the interconnectedness of stuff, and that's what I wanted to kind of get into right here. Like, I think we're all connected, and we don't do a great job talking about this. And there's all these different theories on how we're connected, and there's this simulation stuff, and I'm interested in it on multiple levels. I think we're connected just in terms of the language that we speak on. Like, we're all constantly influencing each other in a powerful way that we don't fully understand. I was watching the baby Layla. There's Layla and Letty. Letty's like a year and 2 months. Layla's like 3-4 months. I hope that's right. I think that's right. October. No, she's 3-4 months. She's 2 months. Yeah, she's like 3 months. Almost 3 months. Anyway, you take Layla and you pick her up and you flip her around and playfully, and she's laughing, and you flip her upside down and she's bugging out. Letty might be a little too young for that, but also Letty, like, I was looking at them and thinking, like, they don't even realize they're grasping like with what these things are, everything, how their mouths make noises and how to move their fingers and such, and they're grappling with all this stuff. And I don't think they yet realize the way we do, the way we think about ourselves as agents and about like picking her up. Like, if I was getting picked and flipped around like that, I'd be scared to death. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Put me down. In fact, I remember as a kid, kind of doing that. Like 6, 9, whatever. 6 years old, 8 years old. Knowing what falling is like, It feels like the kids thankfully, they don't know what it is, and they're just like enjoying it. And they know that their sense of themselves is not, it's a continuum with the aunts and the uncles and the mom and the pop and the grandmas who pick her up and laugh with her. And we're all, I don't know if she develops her ego until later on, this like more rigid sense of herself separate from everyone else and from everything else. And there's a kind of freedom in that like Letty, the little baby one, she's getting pushed around. She doesn't get to choose much, she can only express discomfort, like by making noises and whatever, crying. But she's very much connected to us. Her entire livelihood and experience is reliant on the people who are watching her and who are caretakers in this moment until she can do things for herself. I think, like, at some point you get to a point where you lock in this notion of the ego and you start to really sense and develop and prioritize and value your own agency, and say, I am walking this way, even with like some of the stuff I've said earlier about like walking towards yourself. I think that's very true. But there's a process of giving way to it also. It's like walking towards yourself, but being honest about the arrangement. Let me see if I can clarify that. There's a way where we fail to notice just how powerless we are, just how everything that we value, everything that we know to be ourselves has been given to us, almost. Everything, other than like things we need, necessities for life, and it's so awesome to be living in a time like this where there's so many like, luxuries and technologies that are available that make life easier. But the anxieties to get that car, to get the job, or to get the house, or to have this status, the anxieties we have around silly things like fashion. Not fashion isn't silly. Fashion's cool. But if it causes anxiety, if we have anxiety over, we have these assumptions about the good and this idea that, there's all this stuff that's separate from us that we need to seek. I think this is this is created, you know, and we're all connected. I hope I'm organizing my thoughts well here. But on the interconnectivity thing, here's a quote. There's a guy named Alan Watts who I appreciate. I think he's passed now, but he's a kind of a writer and a philosopher. He took some of the Taoist and East Asian philosophies and melded it with his own stuff. The reason he's really popular, or was popular, has been popular, is because he has a poetic and sense of articulating these things. He's able to take these weird concepts and articulate them better than some other people can. But he has this concept. He talks about bees and flowers, right? So like bees and flowers are obviously two separate things, but at the same time, bees don't exist, right, without flowers, and flowers don't exist without bees. And so if you look at a bee going around a flower field, it's as if the flowers, and this is a paraphrasing and a bad misquotation of him, but the flowers bloom and they perfume and the bees buzz about. The bees have wings and they travel and carry, and they both do their work separately. They, you know, who knows to what degree they've consciously internalized what they're doing, you know, in what we might call consciousness, like a conscious, like I'm going to work, but they do it and they coexist and they help each other live, and they set the terms of each other. Like, you know, it's almost like organs and like blood going through the body. The bees are the ones with the capability to travel from organ to organ, but the organs are more locked and they perform certain tasks, but the blood does what they do, and they are essential for each other. In a way that you might say they're one and the same. Exactly. You'll say that, you know, in terms of you, these are all organs in your body. But if you want, and when we do, we have to, for biology, we go in and we look and we separate and we give things labels and names. But they're the same. They're all part of the same organism. The lung is separate from your vascular system and all that, but they're all part of the same organism. I'm separate from you, but, you know, we set terms for each other. This is like the whole co-creation shit. We set terms for each other. There's ways that I dance. Like, I'm a good dancer, by the way, for people who don't know. There's ways that I dance that are simply, it was taught by other people that I've grew up with. You know what I mean? Like, and if I danced a different way, you get looks, and you get people like, what, you can't dance, this, that. You learn how to conform. So we have this way of kind of checking each other. This, I say the library example too. Like, you know, the only reason we are quiet in libraries is because we have conditioned each other into that. So we're constantly conditioning each other into norms of what is acceptable, what is unacceptable. And if we pay really close attention, we can see how that happens all of the time. And we're constantly doing it. And some people, what happens is power is, to me, it's like, one way of defining power is you know, the ability to set those terms with a higher degree of potency, let's say, than other people, you know? So when you hear like women talk about patriarchy, and sometimes you hear men go, what? Men don't even understand. Some do, many men do understand, but some men don't even like the terms of the conversation, patriarchy, and is, you know, it's too vague for them and amorphous and invisible for them, partly simply because we're all swimming in these terms and these norms that have been set and are continually being set by us. We are acculturating and indoctrinating and conditioning each other into these terms. And for some of us, these terms are easier than others. For some of these terms were set by landed, wealthy white men from very many years ago. And for some of us, it's evolved and and they've, we've expanded the definition of human rights, and we've allowed more and more people to be into the definition of what is human. But we still rest on these other prior foundations, and it's possible to be, through no fault of your own, like you're born into whatever position you have, whatever body you have, and you are a beneficiary of a bunch of norms that for you are sensible and reasonable and easy, and for other people are deeply difficult. And I think we're having now, in the age of the internet and the age of cell phones and all that shit, we're having a reckoning with people who previously couldn't speak, previously couldn't distribute their feelings or ideas, previously who was sitting quietly in separate homes, languishing under these norms in sort of separate spaces, unable to communicate with each other, now communicating and saying and realizing collectively, oh shit, yeah, you feel this way too. You're being, you're languishing under this as well. Let's talk about this. Let's air this out. Let's have the conversation. And that's what's happening. And it's unsettling the entire foundations of stuff. To me, that's the definition of stuff. It's unsettling the entire, but we're connected. And to me, that's what this whole spirit is. That's what the whole spirit of this season is about. I grew up Christian. I'm less like a religious person in this way in terms of a churchgoer, but I haven't had a more spiritual experience than in the last year. In the last year, as someone who's an atheist, my experience has been really spiritual. In terms of understanding this connectivity thing, or striving to understand it and kind of see how it works. If you're with me on everything I've just said about these norms and how they affect us and how we're all connected that way, then yeah. Well, let me go a little further then, like with, like look at these trees, man. This is to me when sometimes when like you read this thing and they say, yo, stop and smell the roses and notice the stuff. Notice the intricacy of things like trees, like tree branches. If you flip the trees upside down, let me see if I can just get a whole tree here. You go upside down, you go into the ground and see the roots. The roots look very much like the branches, And so to me, another interesting thing is to note, how self-centered, how anthropomorphic minded, how solipsistic in a way to think that we are the thing, We're connected. What if, couldn't it be the case? Like check it out. Again, the roots go deep. The roots look very much like this. What if we are kind of the end point of a broader thing on this world? What if the trees, the roots are going down and they're doing something down there that is vastly interesting, that most of us simply don't care much about, or that we don't have the technology, especially if we go deep enough, we can't even properly understand. We know that like in the deep ocean, there are animals. We haven't gone down far enough. Humans can't do it even to observe, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. But if we go far enough, we see these rare, crazy animals that people can't understand. There's these animals that have like flashlights sticking out, coming over their heads, the vast complexity of life. The vast complexity of life. How beautiful, how interesting. To us, those things look like monsters almost, But that's simply because we draw monsters with teeth and we have this whole conception of monsters. They're existing. And that's in the water. What about in the ground? What about the bugs and the animals, the burrowed animals that we don't understand? What if there's a whole incredible, complex set of societies and interactions and life going on underneath there, to which we are simply just one inflection point, to which we are simply just one expression. We're kind of the exhaust pipe. Again, what if the trees, these are the outward, out into the atmosphere manifestations of this broader, complex ecosystem and organism. and we operate on here. And just like the bees and the flowers, like, it's important that we do our thing. We go out, it's not important. We just do our thing. We live. We don't even realize, but our contribution, that we breathe in stuff, we breathe out carbon dioxide. But further than that, we plant, we have this capacity to experience, in a way that makes sense to us, with our brains, with our perceptions, in a way that can be beautiful to us. What an interesting opportunity to be alive in this moment and to be able to experience and to express, and to show love and to live, and to hope and to make choices. And maybe the bees think that it's all about them, just like we do. We have different timelines of life and different experiences, but what if they're just, operating, but they have a totally different set of, realities, obviously. Do you see what I'm saying? We're connected as people. We're connected with this planet. And one of the interesting things is, I think the whole concept of separation is a difficult one. It's in our language. When we think of ourselves, we constantly constructing these images, these ideas of ourselves, but we're just experiencing and we're just expressing, and our expressions and experiences are affecting each other. And it's helpful to at least know that. And you can continue doing what you're doing, but I think the more you know that, the more you have to come from love. The more you try to deny that, the more you have a cover to act like an asshole, so we're co-creating all the time. Two people, the entire idea of truth is really interesting. We're on an interesting, we're experiencing a very interesting thing where multiple truths can be true, and it's important for us to realize that. So I'm doing research for the second part of the CNN, the cable news video, and I'm realizing that there's a whole project that was done by University of Maryland journalism students, and shout out to them for that work. It's called Printing Hate. And through doing that research and checking that stuff out, I realized that you might have heard that the newspapers used to, what's going on? The newspapers used to print stuff to promote lynchings and to promote violence against black people. And I remember reading that history in the past and thinking, okay, this is these are racist people. But more I'm realizing with this thing and the whole process of the media and news, and my experience at CNN as well, it's not that. It's actually way more complex than that. It's about selling papers, first and foremost. They were selling papers, and they were also engaging in politics, which then brings me to the scary proposition that what happened then is exactly what's happening now, right? The entire concept of objective journalism came out in the early 1900s, at a time when, the newspapers evolved and the technologies evolved, and there was eventually this fast printing press, and they were able to create newspapers very fast, and it was all sensational stuff. All the newspapers were selling, they were trying to sell papers, and so they were trying, everything was scandal. and they've had political parties that they preferred, and they would just shoot scandal out at each other. They were really, invective about the president, about the secretary of this and that, and they hated governors, and it was very much like it is today. And it wasn't until the early 1900s when a failing newspaper, the New York Times, was bought by a guy named Ochs, and he innovated. He saw a gap in the market. He saw people who wanted a more straight news, right? Because the world was crazy and there was all this stuff and nobody knew what was up. And so they invented this concept of objectivity in journalism. And really the way you do that, because people are not objective. Writers, you can't be objective when you create a work of art, and the news is also a work of art like any other human endeavor and construction. You have these norms about titles that are less sensational, and try to get the facts here and then later put some opinion there. But the truth is, it's a work of art. The moment they bring your attention to something, it's a subjective choice on their part to say that this is an important thing to pay attention to. It's a subjective choice every step of the way in terms of how they describe the thing. And we just need honesty about that. And so objectivity was a constructed thing in the early 1900s, innovated by the New York Times, which is why they got to be legend, and they set a mode and a model for really lots of newspapers around the world that started to take on objectivity, presentation of objectivity, again, which even that is just helpful in some way to speak in a way with an attempt to reach objective facts is great. The way you improve that even further is to acknowledge that not possible, right? We are here are the things we're alerting you to, and here's why we're focused on this story, because we are an organization and we are people who value this, and I'm a writer who is X, Y, and Z, and these are my experiences and my values, and to put that out there front street. Anyway, back to the connectivity issue. They were when you read this, they were posting the dates and times of lynchings in order to help the society gather to commit the lynchings, to commit tortures, and to torture people. And then the reporters would then be on site and documenting it in precisely this way. They would document in detail. And then they hung him to the thing, and then they attached him to the train, and and one leg came off, and and then you could hear the screams of the young boy. It was like it was written the way a fiction novel would be written, and sometimes it'd be written like the way a sports story would be written, about like a back and forth between two teams. It was entertainment for an audience, right? They were before. There was no TVs and shit like that. And it was entertainment for a bloodthirsty audience. And they did that for decades, centuries. It's just important to realize that the news in a free society is a reflection of the society. Just as people are trying to find news for themselves, they're trying to understand the world to a degree. Right? The news, these organizations are trying to find audiences, and so they're feeding each other. And that's a crazy thing to realize, how connected that is. We go, wow, where's the real news? The real news, the idea, the concept of real news is a difficult one. The news is what I'm interested in. There are things that I'm interested in news from my mom. I'm interested in news about psychology. I'm interested in news about 3D animation. You might not be interested in that news. I'm also interested in news about labor. I'm interested in news about... I have my specific set of news, that I'm interested in. And it's a complex thing to say. I'm working on this, and I think I've got a nice thing I'm coming with you guys, but the newspapers in the 1920s were giving their audience what they wanted, which was violent, anti-human, anti-black violence, sensationalism, and a tone, and someone who would write about it with the tone of like, this is, that's a crazy, horrible thing, but that's the connectivity of it. It's telling you who you are. You know what I'm saying? Unless the population starts to want something more than that, the population has to be constantly asking itself, why am I watching this? Is this to be entertained? Is this good for me? Is this true? Is this helpful? Am I learning? But to me, even that, the news is connected that way. It's not like I don't look for news about Australia too often. But some people do. People in Australia primarily, right? And it makes sense. It's more relevant to them. But the news, to me, is an example of this connectivity, especially in a free market kind of thing, where the news is giving you back what you're asking of it and what you've demonstrated your values are. And especially back then when they had, we're talking about, just a few hundred, let's say, newspapers, who are trying to profit, who are not trying to teach you, it's not some just objective effort to share what's going on in the world. They want your attention. And if they want your attention, they will say and do anything for that attention. And we're experiencing that now. It's not, it's actually, this is a huge black eye and a shame. And I think we need to just come to terms with this. And I think that the industry needs to come to terms with this so that we can be honest about what's going on. Because I think that that's key. We're all connected. And for example, even in those times, there were anti-slavery newspapers. There were several anti-slavery newspapers, and those would get run down, and editors of those papers would get assaulted and even killed, The society didn't want a news that would validate the humanity of this set of people for all kinds of reasons, from an irrational fear and anger about, skin color, all kinds of weird other nonsense, and just benefit and privilege, So when you look at that era, right, there's mainstream papers publishing the worst stuff, encouraging the worst elements. The mainstream papers with the professionals encouraging the worst elements of society to do terrible things. Where you see the best news at that time, the best, the news that where there is no black eye, where there is no shame, it's the news that evolved from the struggle. It's the conversations that evolve from difficulty, because there's a primacy, I think, in those conversations. There's something about, hey Joanne, Merry Christmas, how are you? But there's a primacy that comes from those conversations, and to me, that's the restructuring. It's like, how do I connect with news from that's along this line, where it's not about profit and capturing audiences. It's about sharing good information. It's about helping people through things, because that's what news essentially is. That's what it was from the very beginning, when we, humans had to tell each other to be mindful of, watch these berries, eat these berries, don't eat those mushrooms, do eat the mushrooms. Watch this thing, here's a threat over here. It's like, that's what, it's like about sharing and evolving and helping versus this other stuff. That's the big difference. And if we recognize that and we start to move in that intentionally, both as receivers of the news, of the information, also givers, we're all sharing stuff on our social media, we're sharing good information, we're sharing interesting thoughts and helpful ways of being, and so we become, it's a different economy. that's based on a different ecosystem. It's a different experience, like, than to have this corporate entity come in and play telephone and to say, we are aggregating the best stuff, you know, and monetizing it, and therefore they have this control. The best stuff comes from our agency and our connectivity and our acceptance of that connectivity and like that agency and owning it and being part of this. Lots of people have different theories on other stuff, but I think like how to move forward with the media problem, and I think part of it has to be this. We're finally in an age technologically where we can communicate directly to each other. We don't need to have like a, you know, somebody play arbiter or middle person, or put, you know, we got to go to the bulletin board in town to hear the news. You know, we can share stuff. I can hear about what's going on in difficult, like, you know, there's fires in California. I have friends who can tell me that information. There are people who have great knowledge who can share it directly with us, and to do so from a place of understanding that we're connected. For all those other reasons I said, I don't know how long I've been on here, but I think that's the power of this co-creation thing. And I think going back to the baby, like, you know, we get to this place where we stop getting flipped around and tossed around. We assert ourselves as individuals, and we fail to notice how we are still being flipped around and tossed around. We're still very much attached to other people in our lives and being conditioned in this way. And once we acknowledge that, once we can kind of drop, this to me is like kind of dropping the ego. You drop the ego and go back to like a baby, understanding how connected and dependent we are. Now we can laugh more. Like, even the difficulties can be, you know, you're experiencing them, and you know that you're not alone, and you just offer support, and we get out and we get together, and it's a different ball game. And I tried to describe a different, like, organism of media that I think will catch on. I'm going to explain it further, and I think it'll catch on, and that's really all connected to how connected we are. We co-create, man. We set terms. We agree on things, and we set terms whether we know it or not. The key is to just be aware and intentional, and to do it from love and integrity. And that's the spirit. That's what this is. That's what this is. That's when, you know, you asking, I don't know, man. I guess I'll just end there, man. That's what this whole thing is about, you know? And people, sometimes it gets caught with obviously, again, there's this corporatization of selling gifts and all, you know, and all this presents, but it's about, yo, we're connected, and we come from love, and we're sharing good information, and we're trying to help each other through this interesting experience, yo. What's going on, Mazel, Joanne, yo, everybody who came in, thank you. I think that's all I got. That was a bit of a rant. I hope I gotta watch it. I believe it made sense, and I appreciate everybody for checking in. All right, peace. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays, everybody.